Welcome to week 2 of our Lent Devotionals. And Lent is a season where we are preparing our hearts for Easter and realizing just living my own way instead of Jesus' way just keeps me stuck. And so, what are those things in my life that I need to release in order to receive from Jesus? So, this week we're talking about releasing spiritual indifference to receive like a joy and a life and an enthusiasm in our spiritual life. And Romans 12:11 says, "Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord." So when there is zeal, there's no room for indifference. So a definite picture comes into my mind when I think of the word zeal. And there's an excitement and a passion that consumes me. I maybe can't stop talking about something. I'm totally in. I also think of like how I'm like when I go whitewater rafting. I love rafting and it just pumps me up and I'm like so excited. And as soon as we're done, I want to go again and I want to look at the pictures. I'm all about it. And so there's just a contagious spirit with zeal. When you talk about indifference, that is a whole other picture. When I'm indifferent, I'm like, whatever, I don't care. Do what you want, or I think I'm just gonna stay home. You know, there's just kind of a thing about indifference. So when we say yes to following Jesus, there's often just a new zeal and excitement that we can't contain. And sometimes we actually overwhelm people with that. But so I was just wondering about what happens in our life that changes that. Like, how do we lose that zeal? How does it shift over time? And 3 things that just kind of come out of this passage is that we can lose some of the awe of who God is. We can forget to acknowledge and give thanks for what He's doing in our lives. And we can become less and less connected with God in our day-to-day living. And so I think the question is, how do we renew that flame, or how do we keep it from burning out once it's going? So when I was writing these Lent devotionals, I went up to a cabin. And it has this beautiful rock fireplace. And I love fires, but I'm terrible at starting them. So I bought some fire starters. I brought them with me. And when I got up there, the fireplace was all set up for me. Paper, wood, all stacked in the right way. And I was just so excited about it. So I threw a couple fire sticks on there just in case. Opened the damper and just enjoyed a full day of the fire. And I just knew that I had to pay attention to it and keep throwing some wood on it because I did not want to have to start over. Sometimes the fire was really roaring and huge and beautiful, and sometimes it was really just embers, but it was still beautiful and it was still a fire. And I think both versions just have a glow and a beauty to them. So 3 things stood out to me kind of in relating to our spiritual lives about this. One is that someone set the stage for me before I arrived. And I think it's important for us to realize that we are not responsible for our spiritual growth. God is. And that's God's role. And He's the one that transforms us. And you may have lists in your head of what you're supposed to do as a Christian, you know, this to-do list. I just want you to throw them away. It's not our effort that can do it, and God and the Holy Spirit are going to prompt our hearts when there's something that needs to be changed within them. God is prepared for us, and our role is simply to ask Him to give us the desire to love Him more and to follow Him, and then really pay attention to Him and follow the steps that He gives us. He's just waiting for us to ask. The second thing that the fire really reminded me is that the fire starters ignited what was already prepared inside the fireplace. And so what is that fuel that we need to ignite what is happening in our own spiritual life? There's so many options. It might be music, exercise, nature, a small group, different ways to pray, conversations with other people. It might be serving. I mean, the options are endless of what's going to fuel that within us. And I think part of that is because God created us so uniquely. And so what is it within you that draws you closer to God? For me, it's really 2 things. It's music and it's nature. And there's just something about the lyrics within songs that create new pictures for me that really help me see God in a different way or see myself in a new way. And So I love music. Don't ask me to tell you the name of the song or who wrote it. I can't do it, but I love music. And then nature. There's nothing like being in the mountains or being by the ocean or even walking through the arboretum that connects me closer to God. That is a place for me where I slow down and I pay attention and I listen and I give God time. And so those are two things in my life that ignite the fire, and maybe you're thinking about stuff in your own life as well. And then the third thing and the last thing is that I just need to tend to that fire or it's going to go out. And, I mentioned before that whether the fire's roaring or it's low, there's still a beauty in that. And so I'm not saying that when it's embers that we've lost our enthusiasm, because I think there's beauty in both. And sometimes the embers is where the deep work is going on in our lives with God and ourselves. And so I didn't want you to misinterpret that for me, but just to say that we do need to tend to that fire. And we need to keep fueling it in order to keep it living. And we just need to pay attention to our spiritual lives, to experience life and to avoid this indifference that we talked about. So I have something for us this week. So I'm going to remind us that zeal comes from being diligent and being in awe of who God is, acknowledging and giving thanks for what he's doing, and staying connected to him in our daily lives. So this week we're going to be in Live Like Jesus by being in awe of God every day. And so I'm going to invite us at the end of each day to write down one thing that stood out to us and just the awe of God in our lives. And it could be the example of God, I am in awe that you provide for my every need. There's so many things. So that's just an example, but I think starting with this place of being in awe with God helps fuel the rest of the things. So I'm going to ask you again to let's talk about our experience and what's happening in our lives this week. So I invite you to post comments below, and it might be as simple as one thing you're in awe of God about this week. So let's just be reminded of this verse: to never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord.